60% mental and 40% physical.
Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin Noon.
Kevin, goddammit.
Hey, welcome to the BIA Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon, and I'm glad you are joining us here on a Monday afternoon. We will talk about the week that was in college football here in a few minutes, but some news came out earlier today in terms of Ohio State's schedule. We've already known the schedule in terms of who Ohio State will be playing in its 8 regular season games, but we have TV times officially on 2 of them, and truthfully, we know a third one as well. But let's start with the 2 that were announced today. And we all knew that the Nebraska game was going to be a 12 p.m. game on Fox at home, Ohio Stadium, with a 10 a.m. pregame show starting the big noon kickoff show. Urban Meyer and the rest of the gang will be on campus. But, you know, that's been a poorly kept secret. They've been announcing that one here for a while. And then as for the second game, I think we all knew that one as well. And that's going to be Ohio State, Michigan, which will also be a 12 o'clock game at Ohio Stadium to wrap up the season on December 12th. Now, as for the third game, not a Fox game, hasn't been announced officially, but our friends over at Blue White Illustrated, the Penn State site of the Rivals.com network, has announced that the Ohio State-Penn State game will be a primetime game, 7:30 on ABC. Now, that should not come as a surprise. Halloween night, it will not be a whiteout unless all of the cutouts that they have there are in white uniforms or something of that nature. But it is, you know, it's been since 2012 since there's not been a whiteout at Penn State for the Ohio State game. So that really shouldn't come as a surprise. But that was not part of the university release that came out today, or the network release, because everything seemed to be coming from Fox. ABC, ESPN, that group will have its own release. You know, I don't know when we will hear that for sure, but I wouldn't expect them to drag that on too long. Primetime games like that generally don't sit as a surprise. There's just no reason to do that. So I think we'll know that. But what about the rest of the schedule? We're going to have to wait. I have some ideas of what might be going on. I'm talking about that over at the Horseshoe Lounge over at BuckeyeGrove.com. If you're not a member, now is a great time to get on board. We're going to be running a tremendous promo coming up here soon, but if you come on board now and you shoot me an email at kevin@BuckeyeGrove.com, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. But as for a couple things I think that I've mentioned over there, year in and year out, as part of the Big Ten Network charter, I don't know if they're going to call it a charter per se, but as part of that deal, teams have to play 2 games on BTN. 1 non-con and 1 conference game. There are no non-conference games this year, so we don't know if that's going to be just taken down to 1 or if they're still going to try to play 2. Unsure at this point. But once we get past the first 2 weeks, Ohio State goes into a little bit of a layup mode with Rutgers and Maryland. 1 or both of those games, I believe, will be on BTN. It is what it is. Get it out of the way. It's Rutgers and Maryland. So 1 or both, BTN. I think it just really depends on what the rules are for the conference-owned channel, for what they're going to make teams do. Honestly, they're not going to make Ohio State play more games on BTN than anybody else, because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great for BTN because Ohio State equals ratings. But with that being said, there's more money to be made with Ohio State playing on the top tier channels, ABC, Fox, ESPN, to a lesser extent FS1. But, you know, you really want to get them there on those big channels. One other thing that I've reported as well is I believe that, if, let's say Penn State is that primetime game. I have no reason to doubt that. None whatsoever. That one I truly believe. I believe they will play at least one more primetime game. Now, people will be like, well, what about the rule that you can't play primetime games in November or December? Well, December's never really been an issue. So let's just talk about November here. I believe they will play one. And if I believe that's going to be the case, I believe that the league is just going to have to deal with those types of situations. 2020, man, things are just different, and I just think it's going to be a case of where that's going to have to happen. Now, as for which game, I'm not sure yet. I have some ideas. As I told everybody at Buckeye Grove, I wasn't going to come onto the podcast and throw out things there that I wasn't going to post on the board. We're going to have to wait and see at this point. But I have a pretty good idea of where it's going to be and what it's going to be. But I digress. We'll get to that at another time, another place. I may say something over on Buckeye Grove after we're done recording. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But it's great to know that the Big Ten season, less than 2 weeks away. People are planning their own little personal socially distanced tailgates, maybe trying to find a bar to go to, with it being a noon game, the Nebraska game being a noon game. The 10 p.m. bar rule doesn't come into effect. Have a couple drinks, see a couple friends. It feels good. The weather's changed outside. It's definitely fall weather here in Central Ohio now. Leaves are changing. Life is returning to normal to a certain extent, at least in terms of the world of sports. But as we can't talk about the Big Ten in terms of action yet at this point because they haven't started, other conferences are playing, and there were some pretty incredible games that went on this past weekend. The first one I want to talk about is Texas A&M and Florida, a top 25 matchup. Florida, number 4, A&M, I believe, was 21. A&M bested the Gators, 41-38 at Kyle Field. And you can't put this loss on the arm or at the feet of Kyle Trask, Florida's quarterback. 22 of 32, 312, 4 touchdowns. He looked good. He wasn't perfect. 10 incompletions there, but it's not like he was sub 50% or anything like that. He played well. His counterpart, Kellen Mond, for the Aggies, 25 of 35, 338, 3 touchdowns. He played very well, too. One of the big differences was that the Gators could not run the ball. 90 yards, 24 carries, whereas A&M ran it for 205 on 38 carries and had a couple of scores. When I was looking at this season, I guess I fell into the trap of thinking this was going to be a Gators team of old. Tremendous defense, pedestrian offense. Well, maybe we should have flipped that around. Their defense has not been very good, while their offense has been pretty solid. You look at a win against an Ole Miss team that played pretty well against Alabama this week. We'll get into that game in a minute. The Gator defense just has not been able to shut anybody down. But is that a case of that defenses are just that far behind offenses this year? Do the Gators just not have a good plan? Do they not have the right personnel? Or are they just, are they depleted from last year? I don't know. But the Gators were winning, 38-31. 6 minutes and change is when the Gators went up. It took A&M less than 2 minutes or so for Kellen Mond to find Caleb Chapman for a 51-yard touchdown. Ties it up at 38. Florida unable to do anything. Aggies get the ball back. Gators can't stop them. Texas A&M chews the clock all the way until the end of the game. Kicks a 26-yard field goal. Time expires. Florida had an 87.2% chance of winning the game, win probability, after it scored its touchdown. Went up to like 87.5 after A&M's first play was for negative yardage. Gators just couldn't get it done. And, and they fall from number 4, We'll talk about the AP rankings here on the other side of the break. But A&M with a big win. SEC seems to be kind of all over the board. And we'll get back to that conference in a minute because I want to talk about the Red River Showdown. 53-45 OU, 4 overtimes. The best bad game that I've seen in a couple years. Teams combined for 6 turnovers, 3 apiece. OU was up 31-17 at the end of 3 quarters. Texas looked like it was dead and done. But, to Texas's credit, they have been a fourth quarter team. They came roaring back, really in the last 4 minutes of the game, to force overtime. Spencer Rattler for OU did not have a good start of the game. He actually ended up riding the pine as a message was being sent because he just was not right. Just turnover prone, didn't have it. But, overall, 23 of 35, 209, 3 touchdowns, a pick. He was really outplayed by Sam Ehlinger. But really for the Horns, they only had Sam Ehlinger. That was the problem. 30 of 53, 287, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But more impressive, what he did on the ground. 23 carries for a $112 and 4 touchdowns. At the end, you knew it was going to Sam Ehlinger. You knew he was going to call his own number. He was going to take care of what he needed to. To OU's credit, they really, the Sooners really looked like they were on the mat once the heel or the Horns wrestled momentum away. But OU seemed to have an answer every single time down the stretch once we got into the overtimes. And ultimately, Texas's final prayer wasn't answered. And now you're sitting there and you're looking at OU and Texas both sitting with a pair of losses. Oklahoma State, I know we've talked about it before, the lone undefeated. They will stay undefeated this week because the Cowboys game against the Baylor Bears has been postponed. Baylor's been an absolute mess this year in terms of COVID testing. So, to kind of rehash what Urban Meyer said on the Fox kickoff show, Big 12's done. They're done. I don't care if Oklahoma State runs the table, which it's not. It's not going to run the table. It's just not. Big 12's done. There's just no chance that they get in the playoff. And I know, okay, Kevin, they haven't lost any games, and you've said if a Power 5 team runs the table, they're in. Sure. Oklahoma State is not going to do that. It was either going to be Texas or Oklahoma. Both are sitting with 2 losses. It's just not going to happen. Getting back to the SEC and talking about a former Big 12 team, Missouri 45, LSU 41. The defending national champions are now unranked. LSU has looked pretty bad this year. Miles Brennan, their quarterback, their replacement for Joe Burrow, 29 of 48, 430, 4 touchdowns. But that was all they had. The team ran for 49 yards on 20 carries. 49 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't walking through that door. I've talked to a lot of LSU fans who are like, oh, we have 3 great backs. Well, Missouri held you to no great backs. You had nothing going. Missouri, on the other hand, threw for 406 yards, ran for 180 yards. But even with all of that, once again, back to a familiar theme. LSU would take the lead at the end of the third, 41-38. It just kind of had that feeling like LSU was going to screw around and screw around and screw around and finally wake up and win the game. Back to that old win percentage, favorability or whatnot. 87% favorite to win in the fourth quarter. But Missouri would not be denied. And this was a game that was played in Como. That was played in Columbia, Missouri. It was supposed to be played in Baton Rouge. It was moved because of Hurricane Delta. LSU was still the home team, for what that's worth. But it was played in Missouri. Missouri would hit a 5-yard touchdown with about 5 minutes left to go. And that was Missouri's first lead since 7-0. And once again, LSU just didn't have an answer. And Ed Orgeron, after the game, said all the right things. It's broken. We got to get it fixed. A familiar name around here, Bo Pelini is the DC at LSU. He's probably not sleeping well right now. Gave up a pretty cush job to go down there, a homecoming to LSU. I understand that LSU lost like everybody from last year's team. I get it. I also understand that I said before this season that they weren't going to be very good. That they were like a 6-3 type of team. I don't know. I don't remember what. Maybe the SEC is playing 10. I don't know. 7-3, 6-4 type of team. I didn't think we would see the demise happening this quickly, and to the teams that LSU is losing to. There are still some big boys on that schedule. This could be a sub 500 team. It's going to be a long season in Baton Rouge. And while Ed Orgeron has earned himself a bit of a reprieve from some of the critics after hoisting the golden leg trophy at the end of the last season, there were a lot of people that weren't really sold on him before that. And it's not going to take long for them to turn on him again. So if LSU isn't able to figure something out, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. But I will say this. LSU certainly is showing that it is quite mortal. And here's what the next 4 weeks look like for the Tigers. At Florida, that could be a loss. Home against South Carolina. Well, not that Mississippi State or Missouri have been juggernauts. South Carolina's been pretty bad, but, let's just give them a win there. At Auburn, who's still ranked, and we'll talk about Auburn here in a minute. And then home against Alabama. They could lose 3 of those 4 games. That would be 5 losses right there. They'd be sitting at 5 losses there and still would have at Arkansas, at Texas A&M, and then home against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss has shown that it can put up points. It can't play a lick of defense, but it can put up points. Well, on to the next game. Speaking of Ole Miss, that was a fun game to watch. Alabama versus Ole Miss. 63-48. Alabama's offense pretty good. Alabama's defense, I don't know. Did Lane Kiffin, did he have all their signs? Nick Saban seems to think so. Or did he just have the right answer? Or was that defense just not as good as it's been in years past? Ole Miss had 647 yards of total offense. Alabama had 723. Excuse me. Ole Miss rushed for 268, threw for about 380. This was a one-score game, back and forth, like a tennis match through most of the game. I was watching it, and I kept telling people who were with me, I said, Ole Miss has to get a stop. They have to get a service break here. Never happened. Not in the second half. Really, it was Ole Miss that had their serve broken when they had to settle for a 39-yard Luke Logan field goal. Bama, of course, marched right down the field in 4 minutes, scored another touchdown to go up 11. That ends up being a 2-score game. You need an 8 and a 3. Ole Miss started coming back down the field and had to settle for a field goal with about 90 seconds left. Ole Miss attempted its second onside kick. They tried one earlier. Looked like it was executed pretty well, at least designed pretty well. But at the end of the day, the kicker ended up touching it before 10 yards, and it didn't end up working. That would have probably been the play to hold until that point and execute it correctly. That's a lot of ifs. I get it. That's a lot of ifs. But the second onside kick really didn't work. Ole Miss still had a chance. Got it down, used timeouts, whatnot. Needed to get a big, I believe it was a 3rd down stop. Couldn't get it. Najee Harris ends up taking it 39 yards on the house call. Najee Harris, former Ohio State recruit, not a commit. I don't want to start any rumors there. Recruit, 206, 5 touchdowns. DJ Durkin, the former Maryland head coach, is either the DC or the co-DC at Ole Miss. Another person who probably didn't have a very good restful night of sleep after that. Ole Miss is just not able to stop anybody on defense at all. I mean, it has been a mess. You look at, they give up 51 to Florida. They give up 41 to UK. They give up 63 to Alabama. I'm no math major, but that's averaging a crap ton of points allowed. On the flip side, they scored 35 against Florida, 42 against UK, and 48 against Alabama. They're a fun team to watch. But if they played any defense, they might not be sitting 1-2. I don't know. And then if you're Alabama, you got to be a little bit concerned again. Do you just chalk that up as a bad game? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do at that point. But you look at them, and they gave up 19 to Missouri. That's fine. 24 to A&M, and then 48 to Ole Miss. And then the next 2 games are Georgia and Tennessee. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. A couple other games that I want to mention. Clemson 42, Miami 17. That game went about as expected. Miami not quite ready for prime time yet. Derek King still fun to watch, but Clemson is real good. Real good. UGA 44, Tennessee 21. Tennessee not quite ready for prime time either. Georgia played a lot better. I'm still not sold on Bennett at quarterback, but how do you pull him at this point? You can't pull him until there is reason to. And it wasn't like he had a horrible game there. I mean, didn't have a great game. Threw for 238, 2 touchdowns. But, at the end of the day, they just couldn't make enough plays. UGA scores 27 points in the second half after trailing at halftime 21-17. You got to show up. You got to play it's a 4-quarter game, and they just couldn't do it. Notre Dame 42, Florida State 26, in a game that was a lot closer than it really needed to be. You have to give Florida State some credit for playing well. You have to also chastise Notre Dame for not playing well. Yes, it was they ended up winning by 16 points. I mean, that's all well and good. But this is the type of game that you would have really expected Notre Dame to just completely boat race them. And it didn't necessarily happen. When it mattered, Notre Dame was able to outclass them. Things aren't going to get any easier for Florida State. North Carolina up next. A top 5 North Carolina team. I don't know if I'm buying that, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Then finally, I want to get to this, before our break, I want to get to this Auburn-Arkansas game. Auburn ends up winning 30-28. Controversial. Arkansas is up 28-27 in the closing moments. Bo Nix ends up getting flagged for an intentional grounding as he, just on this weird spike play. But it wasn't a forward spike or even a lateral spike. He spiked the ball backward. The ball went backward like 6 yards by the time it was all said and done. He gets hit for grounding, which at that point is a spot foul and loss of down. But loss of down is deceptive because all it means is that the down counted. It's not like you lose an additional down. It's just like, all right, well, the play happens as a spot foul. So it was like a 1-yard penalty with no other consequence. It should have been a fumble. It is a fumble. There was a clear recovery by Arkansas, and everybody saw that except the SEC replay booth. And we know about the SEC replay booth. It was the SEC replay booth that took a defensive touchdown away from Ohio State against Clemson. SEC officiating officially now is worse officiating than the Pac-12. And that's saying a lot. Pac-12 officiating, and I may feel differently come November once the Pac-12 gets out there. There may be a recency bias there. Pac-12 officiating has been pretty horrible, but SEC officiating has been worse. And then they come out with this nothing burger statement, which basically, if you read between the lines, says, well, maybe we screwed up, but tough luck. And I've got it in front of me, and I won't get into all of the points of it, but during the third down play, at 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter, the officials on the field sounded their whistles and blew the play dead as they deemed the passer illegally grounded the ball to conserve time as governed by Rule 732F. I guess I will read the whole thing. During the subsequent replay review, there is conclusive video evidence that the pass was backwards. Yes. However, because recovery of the football was not clearly made in the, and this is bolded, immediate continuing football action, the ruling on the field was determined to stand under Rule 12.3.2E1. Both the determination of a backward pass and the immediate clear recovery are required to reverse a ruling on the field under 12.3.2E1. Now, I DVR'd it back, and an Arkansas player got on it pretty quickly. Obviously not quickly enough. When we have a situation to where the officials sit on their whistles and allow things to happen to the point of where, if it is it a fumble, not a fumble, we're gonna let it happen, then we're gonna blow our whistle, and then we're gonna see, then we'll huddle and talk about it. This was the quickest of whistles. Arkansas got screwed. They really got screwed in this game, and it meant everything, because then Auburn kicks a field goal and wins the game. And to a lot of Auburn fans' credit, they're pissed off too. Yeah, we won, but we should have lost. And we got, we were the beneficiary of some horrible officiating. And then you have Arkansas, who was fresh on the heels of beating Mississippi State, the team that beat LSU. Granted, the LSU win doesn't look like much anymore. Arkansas could be on a 2-game winning streak after not winning a SEC game in its previous 20 tries or 21 or something like that. And now they have to look at how do we bounce back after that? I mean, that's one of those gut-wrenching type of losses that it's kind of hard to bounce back from. So I will be interested to see what happens. And then Arkansas, what do they get for their trouble? They get to go up against point-a-minute Ole Miss. But the good news is Ole Miss has been giving up about a point a minute too. So that should be a fun game to watch. And speaking of Mississippi State briefly too, while I have them there, the Mike Leach era got off to a great start, and now not so much, as Mississippi State just dropped a 24-2 game to Kentucky. And that's not saying, oh, you lost to Kentucky, you suck. Kentucky, that is their first win. But I think it's a matter of KJ Costello throwing 4 picks and then getting benched. They brought in Will Rogers, who then threw 2 picks of his own. 6 interceptions by Kentucky of Mississippi State. No passing touchdowns. Mississippi State ran for 20 yards. 1.4 yards per carry. I don't know. Doesn't look like the team that beat LSU. But we'll get into the AP poll here on the other side of this quick break.
Egg Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com.
Thanks for joining us here on the BIA Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon. We're going to talk about the AP poll and get out of here. Ohio State still remains 6th. Moved up to 5th in the coaches poll, but we like to talk about the AP poll a little bit more, just mostly because you can go to collegepolltracker.com and see a detailed accounting of all the votes. Coaches, you don't see their votes until the final vote. So a little more fun talking about this. Ohio State remains 6th, despite Florida losing ahead of them And that's fine. I think you can live with that. Ohio State loses its 2 first-place votes, though. Again, that's fine. Wait till Ohio State starts playing, and we'll see how Ohio State stacks up against other teams. A couple of issues that I do have, though. First one is I am not convinced that North Carolina is the number 5 team in the country at all. And I think with that, you have to kind of to begin with, what is your definition of how the poll works? I mean, should it be that you're saying that if a team is ranked higher than another team, that if they meet on a neutral field, that the higher ranked team should win? Because I'm looking at the UNC schedule. Wins against Syracuse, Boston College, and then against a ranked Virginia Tech team. Also a Virginia Tech team that's been down a lot of players due to COVID testing. Oh, and there was a canceled game against Charlotte. They haven't really done anything against anybody. They haven't played Notre Dame yet. They haven't played Clemson. They don't have Clemson on their regular schedule. I mean, hell, they haven't even played Miami yet. So I'm not sure about that. You give me Ohio State and North Carolina playing, I don't know, in Kansas City on a neutral field. Put them at Arrowhead. I like Ohio State to win that game by 3 scores. I really do. But, it is what it is. Then I have a problem with Georgia getting a first-place vote that it didn't have last week. That win against Tennessee means nothing to me. Nothing. Okay, great. Tennessee was ranked. Big deal. Who cares? That Tennessee team was smoke and mirrors to me all along. But then again, the voters really seemed to like Tennessee because Tennessee only fell from 14 to 18. So I don't know. It's easy for me to sit there and say, oh, SEC bias, whatever. I just don't see it with Georgia. And the good news is that we're going to learn a lot about Georgia here in a big hurry, as Georgia has to play Alabama this week, 3 versus 2. But I want to say this too: Alabama has 2 first-place votes. Did that Alabama team that gave up 11 million yards to Ole Miss look like it was the number 1 team in the country? Not to me, it didn't. Not to me. Honestly, I'm shocked that Clemson didn't have all the first-place votes. And yes, I know, I've been a big critic of Miami. They're not ready. They're not ready. But Clemson just did not screw around. Clemson went out there and did what it needed to do. I mean, yes, Clemson could have beat them worse. Dabo Swinney made one of the most ridiculous coaching decisions I've seen in a while, trying to go for a 60-plus yard field goal at the end of the half, gets blocked, returned for a touchdown. He owned it at that point. So you take that off the board, Miami scores 10 points. Now, you could sit there and say Clemson got off to a bit of a slow start, only scoring 7 in the first quarter, but this game was never really in jeopardy. I mean, it was 14-0, it was 21-3, it was 35-10. I mean, you just keep going on. It just, they kept their foot on the gas the whole time. So, I don't know. I think Clemson should have all the first place votes. But it doesn't really matter. The truth is that if you're a Big Ten fan, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're really looking for week 2 of that Ohio State schedule. Halloween night. We talked about it earlier. 7:30, ABC. Number 6, and these are of these rankings right now. Number 6, Ohio State. Number 9, Penn State. At that point, we will know a lot about how the Big Ten East and how the Big Ten is going to look. So it'll be interesting. And you know what I want to see, and I'll end the show on this. And I talked about it on the before the break. Our defense is really that far behind? I mean, is that really what we're kind of seeing right now? I'm pulling up as we're talking. I'm looking at scoring defenses. Normally, a couple of games into the season, you're going to still see teams that are averaging, 3 points, with a couple of shutouts in there. Your number 1 team in scoring defense is Marshall, averaging 7. Air Force Academy as well has given up 7, but they've only played 1 game. To find your first Power 5 team in there would be tied for 5th, Georgia, who's averaging 12.3 points allowed. You got Notre Dame at 13, Clemson at 13.3, Pitt, who is the first team there that has 5 games, 18.2, WVU at 19.3. I mean, you're seeing a lot of points being given up at this point. And then conversely, you flip that around and we pull up, our scoring offenses. Alabama's averaging 51. Texas 49.5. You got to figure Ole Miss is up there. 41.7 at 11. Clemson 42.3. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the Big Ten when that conference starts playing. If we're going to see that too, and we're going to see a lot more in the vein of 49-24 games versus 27-3 games. It'll be interesting. And Ohio State will be tested against this Nebraska team. If Adrian Martinez is able to figure some things out, if a running back's able to emerge, it could be a fun game. I like Ohio State still to win that one by a couple scores, but there's always next week to talk about that one. So I'm going to wrap this show up. I want to thank you all for listening to me flying solo on this edition of the BIA Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Be sure to check us out at BuckeyeGrove.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. And you can hear the BIA Podcast Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Thanks a lot for listening, and we will talk to you very soon.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game. Exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing, and come visit us over at BuckeyeGrove.com for all the best Ohio State information on the web.